Hello and welcome to Newsweek South Asia, your one-stop destination for in-depth analysis of security challenges, regional conflicts and the evolving threat of terrorism. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Indian diaspora worldwide protests against Pakistan-backed terrorism in Kashmir. Pakistan exposed at UN, India's strong rebuttal after Pahalgam terror attack. And Balochistan escalates fight for autonomy as Pakistan faces rising resistance. Outrage is sweeping across global cities as members of the Indian diaspora take to the streets, raising their voices against Pakistan's deep-rooted terror nexus. Following the barbaric attack in Pahalgam, Kashmir, which claimed the lives of 26 innocent civilians, massive protests have erupted from London to Washington and Paris, with demonstrators blaming Pakistan for orchestrating yet another bloodbath on Indian soil. Protesters have demanded accountability, justice and direct international action against the terror-sponsoring state. Our report dives into the growing global condemnation of Pakistan's state-sponsored terrorism.
The barbaric terror attack in Pahalgam, which claimed 26 innocent lives, has shocked the global community. Carried out by Pakistan-backed terrorists, the assault is a grim reminder of Islamabad's ongoing support for cross-border terrorism. World leaders, including those from the US, UK and Russia, strongly condemned the attack and the targeting of civilians. This attack is part of a broader strategy to instigate communal tensions and sabotage India's efforts to rebuild Jammu and Kashmir. In the aftermath of the deadly terror attack, thousands of Indians living abroad have come together in solidarity. From London to Washington DC to Paris, chants of Vande Mataram and Bharat Mata Ki Jai reverberated through the streets, aimed squarely at a nation long accused of nurturing terrorism, Pakistan. Protesters in London waving Indian flags and chanting Jai Shri Ram gathered outside the India House and in front of the Pakistani High Commission. The demonstrations were not just emotional responses, but strategic displays of resistance against the global machinery of Islamist extremism, machinery that India accuses Pakistan of exporting.
We are really saddened by what has happened, and that's why we have come over here to support our Indian community that lives abroad. But our hearts are always with our motherland, and it's happening again and again, and that's what saddens us. We are doing a peaceful demonstration over here. I know there are people from the other side standing over there shouting slogans, instigating us, but that's not us. We are here to tell them that they have to stop terrorizing us. We do not support this.
In Paris, demonstrators assembled near the Eiffel Tower, calling Pakistan a factory of terrorism and demanding military retaliation. The protests were particularly sharp, with slogans like Pakistan Murdabad and terrorist Pakistan shame on you. Protesters emphasized that Islamist extremists backed by Pakistan's army are not just a threat to India, but a threat to global peace.
अतवादी सिर्फ एको बोली है वो है गोली इन्हां दे विच इन्नी हिम्मत नहीं है कि हिंदुस्तान दी फौज दा सामना कर सकन किसी भी अतवाद ना कि पाकिस्तान दी आर्मी दे विच भी ये हिम्मत नहीं है कि हिंदुस्तान दी फौज दा सामना कर सकन.
Outside the White House in Washington DC, Indian Americans gathered to demand accountability, carrying images of the Pahalgam victims and waving both Indian and American flags. Demonstrators shouted slogans condemning the Pakistani deep state. Many called out the ideological motivation behind such attacks, religious extremism weaponized by Islamabad.
April 22nd should never have happened. It's a slap on the face of humanity. Islamic terrorism has to stop. People need to understand and acknowledge and respect all faiths. Nobody should have to die because of the faith that they follow.
The Pahalgam incident is not an isolated one. From Dhangri to Kulgam to Rajouri, religious minorities in Jammu and Kashmir have repeatedly been targeted in religiously motivated violence. Indian security agencies have identified at least 2 of the 3 terrorists involved in the latest attack as Pakistani nationals, part of a familiar pattern where Pakistan-trained jihadis infiltrate across the LOC under ISI guidance. Islamabad predictably denied the charge and demanded a neutral probe, a routine deflection it employs after every such incident. But the evidence and public sentiment say otherwise. In retaliation, India has suspended the decades-old Indus Waters Treaty, ordered the immediate closure of the Atari-Wagah border, and cancelled all SVES visas issued to Pakistani nationals. India has long borne the brunt of Pakistan's policy of bleeding India with 1,000 cuts, but now the Indian government appears poised to cut back.
A brutal terror strike in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam region has reignited tensions between India and Pakistan. As the country mourns the loss of 26 innocent lives in one of the worst civilian attacks in over a decade, New Delhi has taken its fight beyond the borders, this time to the world stage. At the United Nations, India strongly condemned Pakistan's open endorsement of terrorism, calling it a rogue state fueling global extremism. This diplomatic assault was triggered by Pakistani Defence Minister Khwaja Asif's stunning confession of supporting terrorism for decades. India's fury over the Pahalgam terror attack reached the corridors of the United Nations, where India's Deputy Permanent Representative Yojana Patel delivered a stinging rebuttal to Pakistan,
fueling global terrorism and destabilizing the region.
Speaking at a session of the United Nations Office of Counter-Terrorism, Patel responded sharply after the Pakistani delegation once again raised the Kashmir issue, attempting to divert attention from its own terror export record.
It is unfortunate that one particular delegation has chosen to misuse and undermine this forum to indulge in propaganda and make baseless allegations against India. The whole world has heard Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif admitting and confessing Pakistan's history of supporting, training and funding terrorist organizations in a recent television interview. This open confession surprises no one and exposes Pakistan as a rogue state fueling global terrorism and destabilizing the region. The world can no longer turn a blind eye.
The interview Patel referred to was given by Pakistani Defence Minister Khwaja Asif to Sky News. In it, Asif plainly admitted,
Well, we have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades, and West, including Britain.
For India, this wasn't just an admission. It was the confirmation of what New Delhi has long maintained, that Pakistani military intelligence complex has institutionalized terrorism as state policy. Patel didn't stop at citing the confession. She accused Pakistan of grossly misusing international forums to push propaganda while shielding terrorist organizations operating from its soil. India called out Islamabad's duplicity, playing the victim of terrorism while actively nurturing terror as foreign policy too. Meanwhile, tensions are boiling at the borders. Following the terror strike in Pahalgam, Pakistan resorted to unprovoked firing across the line of control. The Indian Army responded swiftly and decisively. In retaliation, India launched precision strikes across multiple Pakistani positions in Kupwara, Baramulla, Naushera, Sundarbani and Aknoor sectors, effectively neutralizing forward posts that had been used to aid infiltration and provoke ceasefire violations. The Indian Army issued a statement confirming the escalation. Such provocations are not new, but this time, the scale and nature of India's retaliation mark a shift in operational posture.
After the Pahalgam attack, Pakistan Army has to show that it is doing something. And it is said that many countries have a government which controls the military. But in Pakistan, the military controls the government. Therefore, General Munir had given an open speech where he tried to bring Kashmir back onto the limelight. You know, BBC still says India controlled Kashmir. Al Jazeera also says India, which is wrong. And therefore, after General Munir, he must have given clear orders to start cross-border firing. And of course, every time there's a firing from the Pakistan side, the Indian Army gives a befitting reply.
As ceasefire violations continue, Islamabad's leadership continues its inflammatory rhetoric. In an interview, Pakistani Defence Minister Khwaja Asif even issued thinly veiled nuclear threats, claiming Pakistan would not hesitate to use its nuclear arsenal if its existence is threatened. Experts believe that by issuing nuclear threats, Islamabad is attempting to manufacture global sympathy and manipulate international opinion. A calculated move to shift pressure onto India and escape accountability for its own terror export policy.
See, Pakistan is making these threats about nuclear weapon usage. What it is trying to do is convey to the Western world that, look here, I am threatened so much by India, I have no other option, I will have to use my nuclear bomb. So please do something. So what Pakistan is trying is to create opinion and propaganda in the world so that world leaders create a pressure on India to lower the tensions. That is the game plan of Pakistan. I think the world very well understands what Pakistan is doing. And no matter what Pakistan keeps saying, India will keep its preparations and will take whatever steps India has to take.
Meanwhile, in a major diplomatic move, India has suspended the Indus Waters Treaty, a long-standing water-sharing agreement with Pakistan. The step signals New Delhi's intent to hold Islamabad accountable on all fronts: strategic, economic and diplomatic. India has also presented evidence suggesting that the two terrorists involved in the Pahalgam terror attack were Pakistani nationals, once again exposing Pakistan's role in cross-border infiltration and terror sponsorship. Islamabad, true to form, has denied any involvement, but the credibility of such denials has worn thin in the face of mounting evidence and open confessions by its own ministers. The terror attack in Pahalgam and the subsequent developments at the LOC, the UN and diplomatic back channels have peeled back the mask on Pakistan's duplicity. From admissions of terror funding to retreating troops on the border, Islamabad is facing the heat. India's message is unequivocal. The era of restraint is over. Whether on the battlefield or the world stage, there will be consequences, not just for the perpetrators, but for the state that harbors them. In yet another stinging blow to Pakistan's embattled security apparatus, the Baloch Liberation Army, a separatist group in the restive province of Balochistan, has claimed responsibility for a series of deadly attacks, including the assassination of ISI officer in the strategic coastal town of Pasni. Islamabad's iron-fisted rule over the resource-rich yet impoverished province has only intensified resistance, pushing the Baloch people further towards an armed struggle for their rights. Balochistan, Pakistan's largest yet most neglected province, remains a battleground for an independence struggle. The Baloch Liberation Army, or BLA, has intensified its insurgency with a fresh series of well-coordinated attacks across Balochistan, sending shockwaves through Pakistan's already struggling security establishment. In its recent high-profile operation, the BLA assassinated an ISI agent identified as Mohammad Nawaz in Pasni, a strategic town near the Chinese-backed port city of Gwadar. Nawaz, a resident of Punjab's Khushab district, was travelling with members of a so-called death squad, covert militia groups accused of abducting and targeting Baloch activists, when his convoy was struck by a remote-controlled IED.
The recent attack by the Baloch Liberation Army, in which an ISI officer named Mohammad Zubair was killed, is a clear message to the Pakistani state that the Baloch Liberation Army is a very strong force in Balochistan that can target its intelligence officers, member of its secret services at any time and any place they want to target them. Because the Pakistani army always claimed that they're just a bunch of the people, those who are resisting against the Pakistani state, but such attacks shows how strong these forces are, how strengthened the Baloch Liberation Army is, and how much a threat they are for the Pakistani state.
The group claims Nawaz played a key role in coordinating counter-insurgency operations in Gwadar, a region at the heart of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. But the killing was only one of several operations. In Dadar Bulan, the group carried out a grenade attack on police lines. And in another act of sabotage, BLA operatives attacked vehicles linked to the military and the Sandak mining project, while simultaneously blocking the main national highway, a move that disrupted movement and signaled growing insurgent control.
I believe the Baloch Liberation Army and the other organizations such as the Balochistan Liberation Front and others, those who are fighting for the independence of Balochistan, those who are involved in a armed struggle resistance against the Pakistani army and its security forces, they are in a huge number, and they are garnering a lot of support from the people of Balochistan. And we have witnessed many attacks where they were able to force the Pakistani military personnel of the frontier corps to leave their outposts, run away. In a way, we have seen many of the military personnel surrendering to them. There are many video.
Just days before this killing, the BLA made international headlines after hijacking the Jafar Express, a passenger train running from Quetta to Peshawar. This move, which included holding passengers hostage and derailing the train, shows that the BLA's reach is no longer confined to remote hills but extends to Pakistan's core infrastructure. The BLA's war against the Pakistani state is rooted in decades of exploitation, ethnic discrimination, and the plunder of Balochistan's vast natural resources. The port city of Gwadar, now a linchpin in China's $62 billion CPEC project, is seen by Baloch nationalists as a symbol of occupation. While Islamabad projects CPEC as a game changer, Baloch communities see it as another scheme that exploits their land without their consent, guarded by the very forces they accuse of oppression. For decades, Islamabad's response to the Baloch movement has been rooted in militarization. The infamous kill and dump policy, involving the abduction, torture, and killing of Baloch students and activists, has scarred countless families. Human rights groups have documented hundreds of enforced disappearances, with victims often taken from university hostels in Punjab, Sindh, and Balochistan, never to return.
Baloch youth, Baloch intelligentsia as a threat to the Pakistani state. So that is why they've eliminated countless political activists, leaders, student activist leaders, journalists, poets, people of all walk of life. So the cost the Baloch people have paid under this occupation, and they're still paying, it's a huge one, because they have been targeted. They've been targeted in ways people cannot imagine. People are being abducted, people are being tortured, they're being killed, people are receiving mutilated dead bodies of their loved ones. Their mass graves they're unearthing in Balochistan. Baloch women and children and elderlies are being subject to the enforced disappearances, arbitrary detentions. They are being targeted in the police custody.
While the Pakistani state labels Baloch separatist groups as foreign-backed terrorists, rights activists argue that the roots of this conflict are domestic: political disenfranchisement, ethnic marginalization, and decades of state violence. And with Islamabad showing no signs of engaging in dialogue, the insurgency is only expected to grow more aggressive and widespread. Protests have intensified in Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan as local residents rally against Islamabad's attempts to seize control of their land and natural resources. Demonstrations erupted in the Sugar district against the proposed Mines and Minerals Bill, which protesters say is designed to legalize the exploitation of the region's mineral wealth without the consent of its indigenous population. This unrest marks a growing backlash against decades of political disenfranchisement and economic marginalization in the occupied territory.
In a significant display of civil resistance, hundreds of residents gathered in Hussaini Chowk in Shigar, Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan, demanding an immediate halt to Islamabad's resource extraction plans. The protest drew participation from several villages including Dasu, Baraldo, Hyderabad, Tisar and Basho. Demonstrators raised slogans such as Kabze par Kabza na Manzoor, rejecting what they described as repeated illegal occupations of their land, mountains and mineral resources. They called for the withdrawal of the proposed Mines and Minerals Bill, warning that any mining activity without local consultation would face strong resistance.
फिर हम जाने ना हम खुद काम करेंगे ना हम एडमिनिस्ट्रेट करके काम करेंगे और उसमें से 1%, 2% जो तुमने हमारा में लिखा है नहीं हम नहीं जानते हम नहीं मानते वही 1% अवाम का सदका तुम्हें वापस करने के लिए करेंगे.
The protesters expressed deep concern over Islamabad's long-standing policy of exclusion and suppression in Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan.
The protests in Gilgit-Baltistan are a clear manifestation of the people's frustration with Islamabad's exploitatory policies. The so-called Mines and Mineral Bill is yet another attempt by the Pakistani state to plunder the natural resources of this already marginalized region without any consent or benefit to the local people. This bill essentially hands over mineral wealth of Gilgit-Baltistan to the central government and military-backed companies, sidelining the indigenous communities who are rightful custodians of these lands. This reveals a fundamental flaw in Islamabad's government approach, colonial-style administration rather than democratic engagement. There is no meaningful representation of the people of Gilgit-Baltistan in the legislative process and their concerns are always dismissed.
Beyond land grabs, the region faces prolonged power outages with blackouts lasting up to 20 hours in some areas. These issues have amplified local frustration, especially as the region remains underdeveloped despite its immense natural and strategic importance. Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan serves as a crucial segment of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. However, the increasing unrest is now disrupting trade and logistics along the Karakoram Highway, which connects Pakistan to China through this region.
Pakistani state is entirely accountable for the deliberate underdevelopment of Gilgit-Baltistan and POJK. Despite its immense strategic value, bordering China, serving as a gateway for China-Pakistan economic corridor, and being rich in minerals, the region remains starved of basic infrastructure. Power outages are common, healthcare is inadequate, education is underfunded, and roads are often impassable. This neglect is not accidental, it's systematic. Islamabad ensures the region remains politically weak, economically dependent, so it can continue to exploit without resistance. Billions are spent on CPAC and the military installations, yet the local population suffer from basic power shortages. This shows that the strategic importance of Gilgit-Baltistan is only viewed through geopolitical and military lens, not in terms of human development or rights.
India has consistently opposed the inclusion of Gilgit-Baltistan in CPEC, asserting that it is part of the territory illegally occupied by Pakistan. The protests have brought renewed attention to Islamabad's governance failures and its continued disregard for the aspirations of people living under occupation. The ongoing protests in Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan reflect widespread discontent against systemic exploitation and political neglect. As Islamabad continues to push controversial policies in the region, the demand for autonomy, consultation and recognition of indigenous rights is only expected to grow louder.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@anin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.